Okay, so on Sunday in the Walker of Waterdeep, the party finished up their battle against Onihitokuchi and Hidetsugu. The battle had started in the previous session, session 93, and we had gotten to the top of the third round. They had knocked Hidetsugu unconscious, and now they were dealing with Onihitokuchi. Now, I did not give Onihitokuchi a bunch of extra resistances or things like that because they had already had that big fight against the Spirit Guardian. So at the top of the third round, or close to the top of the third round, the monk, Oyohusa, he was able to come in and he was able to land a stunning strike on Onihitokuchi, and that stunned this demon. So basically, that meant that with the party, the heroes they had summoned with the Horn of Valhalla, they were able to just now start getting advantage on all of their attacks. And otherwise, Onihitokuchi is just a big bag of hit points. And so they had some nice, satisfying knocks against that. They got to see his hit points just get ratcheted down rather quickly. And then at the top of the final round, Gallibond, with his big magical battle axe, he was able to land the killing blow and get rid of the demon. Well, then they wanted to see what they could do about Hidetsugu, because the party learned about Hidetsugu from talking to other people that knew Hidetsugu before his corruption and knew about Hidetsugu's history. And that includes General Umezawa. And the general had at one time been a very close friend with Hidetsugu and considered him like a brother, even though Hidetsugu was an ogre. They also had that experience with the fact that there was corruption on the Guardian, and once the corruption was cleansed, the Guardian was restored to its pristine state. So I think a lot of the PCs would naturally presume, and I believe a lot of the players naturally presumed, that there was a corruption in Hidetsugu, and once that corruption was removed and the source of it was defeated in the Onihitokuchi, that maybe there might be some redemption from Hidetsugu. But that's not really the way I had designed that character. And I gave them a few little hints in what they saw and what they found when they actually got into the battle. But I don't think I think that either the players didn't notice those hints, or the players perhaps noticed them, but they thought, no, my character's going to still want to try to see if this guy can be redeemed. They worked really hard to try to redeem this character by doing some ceremonial stuff. They cast some spells, minor restoration, to remove any kind of curse effects and remove any sort of things. This was all while Hidetsugu was still unconscious. And they had found out what his favorite type of tea was, and so they had created special tea bags, and they brewed a special tea that they were going to have for him. And they even went so far as to do a sending back to Mochi and have Mochi bring General Umezawa to the site of the battle before they got Hidetsugu out of his unconscious state. When Hidetsugu regained consciousness, he immediately just started, he was bound up and he was tied up and everything. They weren't being naive. They realized he was still a powerful enemy. So they had him all bound up and everything. But as soon as he regained consciousness, he immediately began lashing out and began insulting the characters. And when somebody would get close, he would try to lunge out and bite them. The characters were still trying to figure out, how are we going to redeem this character. So finally I realized they were not going to do anything on their own. They weren't going to get that this guy was unredeemable. So I finally had the general step in. He said a few words to Hidetsugu, and Hidetsugu insulted him and belittled him and lashed out at him. And then the general, you know, making it obvious that this was a very painful and hard decision for him, the general took out his own sword and slit Hidetsugu's throat and killed him. And that immediately distressed some of the players. They felt like all of their efforts to try to restore this guy had just been wasted because this other NPC just came over and killed him. So I was a little bit concerned that they might feel really bad about that. So I thought, okay, at the break, we're going to talk about this a little bit. But we went on, you know, there was a very dramatic moment and some tension between different members of the party, because some members of the party agreed with the general. Yeah, okay, we did everything we could. This guy wasn't going to be redeemed, and told the other characters, okay, just deal with this. I mean, the general is the authority here. He made this decision. Just live with it. And others were like, I can't believe you're not upset about this. Blah, 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 blah. So there was some discussion and disagreement. Mainly it felt like it was disagreement between the characters, but there was a little bit of, I was worried might be spilling over into some dissension between the players. So that's why I thought, okay, at the break we're going to talk about this. They went back to the palace. They reported the fact that they were able to defeat the Oni, defeat Hidetsugu, but they could not redeem Hidetsugu. One of the characters, Elora, she kind of told the queen straight out that she thought that the general just had made the wrong decision and kind of belittled him a little bit. That was something the queen didn't necessarily like. And she wasn't going to say anything to these people because they are still heroes in her eyes and heroes in the eyes of all the people. But it definitely did put a bit of a sour taste in her mouth. And some of the other characters, they picked up on that and they're like, "Ooh, okay, Laura, let's just let's get everybody out of the audience chamber here and cool down a bit." That's when we took our break, because then they said a couple of them were going to go back to their rooms. Several of them wanted to go out into the city because some of them just wanted to go wander around and cool off a little bit and whatnot. We took our break, and when we came back, I told them, I said, okay, I got the sense that you all, when you heard the stories about Hidetsugu, and, because of your experience with the Guardian and some of these other things and the attitudes of some of the other NPCs, you might have been feeling like Hidetsugu was sort of an Anakin Skywalker anti-hero, where he had been seduced and corrupted and had fallen, but there was still basically a good person there, and if you give him a chance, he's going to be redeemed. I said, but by my reading of the lore and the way I chose to create Hidetsugu, he was more like a Khan Noonien Singh character out of the Star Trek series, where he just was raw, naked ambition, power, and greedy, and the corruption from the Oni of Chaos was something he had actively sought in order to increase his own power. And he resented that anybody had been able to take that away from him, or any kind of situations. And so he was just bitter and angry and would kill or die to get that back, and would not be satisfied with just becoming, redeemed in the eyes of the people. He's like, redemption is for sissies. I want power. I wanted to make sure that as players they knew that. I made it clear. I said, it doesn't matter if your characters think that, but just as players, I want you all to be clear on that, so that that you're not confused about what the options were there. There are times that you're going to run into people that may have once been heroic, but are so far gone they can't be brought back. Not every fallen hero is supposed to have a happy ending. So they all understood that, and I think they appreciated that, and one or two of them may have needed that clarification. I know 2 or 3 of them realized what was going on there, but I think maybe 1 or 2 of them might not have been so clear on that situation. So we advanced the plot. Oyohusa and Gallibond each went back to their respective rooms, and Oyohusa tried to have a conversation with his new sword, which he's now figured out, is sentient and does have a personality, but it's a very condescending personality. And the sword is like, you're not good enough. and what, who do you think you are? And those types of things. Meanwhile, Gallibond was, having a conversation with his axe, Willowroar, and Willowroar was very pleased that he had had a chance to smite more corruption, and was excited about adventuring further with Gallibond, and really seems to relish the chance that he and Gallibond together have a chance to seek out and destroy corruption where they find it. And of course that fits with Gallibond just fine. He enjoys that too. There's a big contrast in the way these two people are dealing with these weapons that they have, these sentient weapons that they have. Adamant went out into the city to the forges, and he was helping with the rebuilding effort, and he used one of his abilities where he can take raw materials and create a bunch of finished product with it, with I think it's a 10-minute casting of a spell. What he was creating for them is he was creating nails, because he realized they were doing a lot of reconstruction and they needed a lot of nails. So he had him bring a 10-foot by 10-foot by 10-foot block of metal, and he turned all of that into a big group of nails that could be used. And of course they were just astonished by that. Inca and Elora went out into the farming area, to the fields. And I described that, even though this is kind of close to the harvest time, the harvest is a little thin because people haven't had a chance to plant very well, because there's, been a war raging going on, and the fields are a bit choked with weeds. So they're getting close to having to harvest this, but it's going to be it's going to feel like it's kind of a meager harvest and not. So Elora suggested to Inca that she go play some music for the farmers, and that Elora was going to go out into the fields and see if there was anything that she could do. Well, Elora has this spell, takes 8 hours to cast, so she goes out into the middle of the field and she starts casting the spell. And what it does is, for a half-mile radius centered on her, it will just not only improve the land, but improve the plants and make the crops healthier and more abundant and whatnot, and it will eliminate a lot of the weeds and do that kind of stuff. So I just had her describe how this happened, and whether it was something that happens all at once at the end of the spell, or if it gradually improves. And she said, well, yeah, it's kind of a gradual thing. So I described how the farmers, over listening to the music, they kind of had gathered all of their farming gear, and they were sort of sharpening their tools and feeling uplifted by this music that Inca was playing for hours and hours on end. And then somebody realized when Elora came stumbling out of the field at the end of the 8 hours, somebody noticed the movement, and then when they looked, they did a double take, because they saw that the crops are now full and rich and green, and the weeds are much diminished, if not completely gone. and they, kind of put two and two together, and they realized what Elora has done. And so she was, hailed as yet this great hero once again for bringing the abundance to their crops. So Adamant got a lot of praise heaped on him. Elora got a lot of praise heaped on her. Everybody was very happy because of the music that Inca had been playing. And Gallibond was, of course, getting along well with his weapon. And Oyo was kind of having a hard time with his. So Oyo goes in and talks to Gallibond while the others are out in the town. And they have a bit of a conversation. And kind of an awkward conversation about, well, yeah, how do you get your weapon to be nice to you? and Gallibond's like, well, I don't know, it just seems to like the same sort of things I do. Oyohusa's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do about mine. And I thought there were maybe some opportunities for him, but he didn't ask. He didn't put two and two together from what Gallibond was saying, I think. And I don't even know if Gallibond realized he was sort of giving Oyohusa some insights on how he might be able to better relate to his weapon. But we'll see how that goes. It's a developing relationship, and Gallibond has had his axe for a while. And Oyohusa has only just gotten the sword. When the sword deigns to speak to him, it pretty much is just very condescending towards him, and it sort of puts him down all the time, which is kind of frustrating for Oyohusa, because this sword is supposed to be connected to the deity that he follows, and so he's trying to figure out, well, why would this deity give me this weapon if the weapon is so cantankerous and so disagreeable? But there's a reason for that, and he's got the player has to sort of figure out what's going on and how to unlock. It's not something that is just going to be obvious and given to him, because after all, player chose to follow a deity that is a god of secret knowledge. So there's always a trick to unlocking secret knowledge. It's not just something that is given to you. You have to work for it. I think that the player's finally realizing, oh, maybe I have to do a little work to figure this out. It's not just, it doesn't just mean that I get access to all this secret knowledge that other people don't have. No. Secret knowledge requires keys. Keys, you have to figure out how to use them. And even if you have a key, you have to figure out where the lock is and how the lock works. So that's going to be another subtext. We didn't quite get to the point where they were ready to leave the palace yet by the end of the session, but we're very close to it. Here in Kamigawa, the last thing they have to do is they have to go back to the Aki, take the sludge they got from the bog and have that refined into the oil that they need, and then they're able to go home. I'm sure that that's going to happen during the next session, so I told them between now and next time, go ahead and update their character sheets and raise their characters to level 9, because they are all now level 9, or when they leave Kamigawa, they will be level 9 characters. So now that there's not going to be any more combats or anything, and we have a week off, well, we don't have a week off, but we have a week between sessions, this is a good time for them to go ahead and update their character sheet. And then when we come back next time, if we get into the new scenario where we are, they already have their character sheets updated. Alright, so that is going to do it for our review of Walker of Waterdeep. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Hope you like this new format for breaking up the recaps into each individual game, giving them each their own recap. Like I always say, try to keep your games interesting so that you have tales from your table that you can share as well. Good night, everybody.